Welcome to this episode of YouTube, where I've entitled it Laying Low, except when there's stimuli, and that's really what July is about. So I thought I'd start this YouTube with the retired wolves first, because they always seem to be pushed to the end of the YouTube. So one of the things that we do, obviously we have the mister system, that's a kind of a light breeze of water that is adjacent to their enclosure, but sometimes we need to hose down the concentration of urine. Grizzer is a well-known RLUer, raised leg urinations that are frequent on the stumps and things. So we like to hose them down and kind of dissipate or dilute that urine smell. Grizzer likes hoses. He likes to play in them and interact with them, so he has really a little bit of opportunity to get a little bit of a mist in his face. The other thing that's kind of happening now is lots of berries on the elderberries, so they're laying low down into the enclosure, and oftentimes the wolves are rubbing up against them, or you'll see berries on their head. As a matter of fact, unfortunately, Grizzer had a berry in his eye the other day from one of those elderberries. So things are happening. Dirt is the friend of wolves in this kind of time of the year with July heat, although we really have not had the heat that many of you across the country have had. It's been relatively calm, but it is something that the wolves do seek out when they want to try to get a break from it. So over in the exhibit pack, we again are featuring a program called Noon, the Wolf Enrichment Program at Noon. And this is Grayson with his legs crossed there. An easy way to ID him. Again, he's got a little bit of that pitch on his back left where we had that issue earlier. The hair is kind of growing in. But he also has some pitch by his eyes. So that right eye's got a little dark spot there. So if you see that on the webcam, you can identify him. But during the summertime, like I said, we try to do an enrichment at noon to give them a little bit of stimuli. We are dealing, again, with Bolt's phobia about bugs. You can see here not every wolf has a bug phobia. Grayson just as soon bite him and kill him and not really be afraid of them. Bugs are obviously present. So that's one of the other things when you want to lay low, you want to get away from the bugs. So shade is very, very important. That's a little bit of a drawback for the exhibit pack in the front of the exhibit. It's wide open because that's where all the electrical and all the water lines and everything. We can't put trees right in the front of the exhibit. So there's a little bit of shade. We've been working on that, trying to get some shade in the adjacent areas to the front of the exhibit. But for the most part, later in the day, the wolves are likely to come towards the front of the exhibit. But middle of the day, they tend to be either back up in the woods, in the dens, or kind of on the fringes of the exhibit. So that's where it's a little bit challenging for us. So we do this enclosure enrichment. Those of you who might have been on an ethology class in 2015, I believe, you recall that we stimulated the wolves to come to the sound of chimes at the window. Definitely a little Pavlov experiment where we make some noise and then give them a treat, and that allows us to get them a little bit closer. One of the things that you're seeing here is a new enrichment that someone suggested to us. This is Doggy Bubbles, peanut butter flavored bubbles that someone recommended as an enrichment. We hadn't tried it, but here's the reason why we wanted to try it. Bolt's, who has a phobia of things flying around his head, we wanted to give him a positive association with something that's flying near him. And certainly peanut butter, and we also have bacon flavored bubbles, was a way to do that. So he has these things flying over his head, which he normally associates with bugs, and he runs. But in this case, it's a flavored bubble, and we're going to try that and see if that we can help him out overcome that. The other thing about enrichment is that it makes him do a little bit of work to try to get, we don't always just do bubbles. This is actually, I believe this was Nux gelatin with deer hide, which was stuck on the rocks there, and that's Aiden doing a little bit of work trying to get that enrichment out. So you can see people right at the window, so it gives people an opportunity to see the wolves when they're not necessarily active. So that midday, we do it at noon, and every day from June 15th to August 15th. So the wolves are really probably most bothered by the fact that they're wearing their winter coats back, and this is Axel, and you can see the undercoats are ready coming in. That sleek loss of winter coat is only something that you see really in the month of June, maybe even late June into early July, and by this time winter's coming back, and so that's making them a little bit warmer because they've got a little bit more insulation going on there. So the Arctics are definitely active, and we're going to talk a little bit about yearling testing. You might be seeing some things on the webcam. Let me first start by saying that Grayson probably had the hardest time coming in this exhibit, and Denali seemed to be the biggest antagonist for him. Bolts kind of played like a yearling, but Denali was a little bit of an antagonistic, kind of pushing him, grabbing him, and that has an impact on Grayson. So here we are in the summer, obviously with yearlings, and this is surveillance camera, so we've been watching this happening a little bit. You see these yearlings starting to get a little bit excited. There's Bolts there with his tail wagging. The pack was actually there. But watch this clip, and this is again a lot more intensity of grab biting, and the mounting from behind tells us that there's probably a little bit of a hormonal surge that kind of happens here that makes them a little bit more intense. So see the tails go up, but in addition to that, you're talking about a predatory drive, and that's where you see the heads drop low. That's Axel on the right, stalking, Grayson on the left, and they're targeting Denali. And so Denali, unfortunately, is probably targeted because of how he interacted with those pups when they first came, especially for Grayson. So that's kind of going on for a little bit. We're fortunate that we have 24-hour day surveillance cameras, but we have to be training staff on how to watch for the behaviors that trigger tension and or that indicate tension, and those are things that we kind of need to really be aware of. First and foremost, stopping these interactions oftentimes make them a little bit more intense. You can see now Bolts is also in a predatory ambush, and that's what in the ethogram called an ambush behavior there, where they're going to ambush Denali. Denali's onto it. He sees them. Denali has no reaction. It kind of loses the effect when your intended ambushee is aware of what's going on. But those are kind of things that we're watching for, is that predatory drive, looking for that kind of response. But like I said, first and foremost, we would never separate out an individual on this, because the wolves seem to have this perception that when a wolf is moved off, that it's dispersed, and then trying to get them back in is proven to be problematic. Second of all, like I said, intervention gives both of them a sense that they may have won something, and so we want to make sure that we're aware of that. Favoring Denali definitely makes the yearlings more of a target. So if we're protecting a weaker in their minds, if he needs to be protected, he's a little bit weaker, the focus is going to be even that more intense. So first and foremost is put your emotions at the door. Second of all, look to the past. This is Bolts as a yearling testing Aiden. We have a lot of history here. This is Denali as a yearling going on 2 with Grizzer. This is Grizzer as a yearling giving his opinion to Shadow, and this is Maya and Grizzer in their endeavors over Malik. So we've been through it before, even back with Arctics and in an exhibit, and that's a Shadow Malik, and that was in August of 2002, I think. I apologize, I can't remember, it's been a long time ago. But most importantly, harassment is not necessarily mean that the wolves no longer have a social relationship. And you saw Lakota just come right back out. But we do know that things intensify as the fall progresses into winter. And it's really just getting through this juvenile stage that becomes the issue. It seems like once they're 2-year-olds and they're adults, they've got manners. So we're working on that, and we know that they can get intense. So that's what's going on here. So if you do see some activity on the webcam, we are aware of it. We are using distractions. We are looking for things that will, again, change the focus a little bit, but we recognize that the pack is going to be the pack, and that's the laws and rules that wolves live by. So stay tuned, and if you want to hear more about pack dynamics, we have a webinar on August 2nd. Check out our website at wolf.org, and we are going to feature a lot more footage about yearling testing and talk a lot about that circumstance of Denali and Grayson. Otherwise, that's it. Thanks for watching.